This is the ultimate revenge. First, the man's beard was shaved clean, and then he was securely strapped to the operating table. The doctor performed surgery on his lower body, and when the man woke up, he discovered that he had lost his manhood. He was devastated. Then the doctor took out some special devices and told him to try them out, saying that they were very effective. So what was the reason for the doctor's revenge? As a plastic surgeon in Spain, Robert gives a talk at the local university, explaining he's helped in 3 of only 9 face transplants worldwide. This gives him ample experience in shaping and maintaining muscles. On his way home, he stops at the hospital to pick up an extra bag of blood by bribing an employee. Unbeknownst to his colleagues, Robert has been conducting illegal experiments on a woman named Vera, who is confined to a room at his secluded estate, forced to wear a full bodysuit all day long. Her life isn't thrilling, so she seeks ways to keep busy with yoga, reading, and making eerie dolls from scraps of fabric she rips from unused dresses. Food arrives via a dumbwaiter, and if she needs anything, she can use the room's intercom to ask Marilia, the head servant. Upon arriving home, Robert first drops the blood in his private lab, then checks on Vera through a hidden camera. Once satisfied, Robert visits Vera, but one evening, a shocking sight awaits. Vera knows where the camera is, and facing away, she used book pages as blades to cut herself. Finding Vera covered in cuts, Robert rushes her to his private operating room to treat her wounds. Tired of being a lab rat, Vera says she wants to die, but Robert doesn't buy it. If that were true, her cuts would be in a different place. Robert also notices how incredibly soft her skin is. From then on, Robert starts an experiment that now includes animal blood. Days later, the results are a success, and Robert becomes the sole creator of artificial skin resistant to burns and insect bites. Using a mannequin shaped like Vera's body, he prepares patches of this synthetic skin to replace Vera's natural one. Now she cannot be hurt again. Days later, Robert formally unveils the artificial skin at a medical symposium, claiming he tested it on animals and that it offers malaria immunity. The invention is named Gal after Robert's late wife, who perished in a fiery car crash. After his talk, the organization's president corners Robert to ask how he made the skin resistant to malaria, as that implies a mutation. Caught off guard, Robert admits he transferred genetic information from pig cells into human ones, which is strictly prohibited. Despite its potential, the president cannot condone this and orders Robert to abandon his research. Later, Robert chats with his old friend Fulgencio, who suggests Robert should return to regular surgeries. Back home, Robert watches Vera on the screen before telling her she's finished. Her body is perfect and needs no more changes. Vera believes this means she can now live a normal life and attempts to seduce Robert, hoping this will grant her freedom, but he becomes uncomfortable and rushes out, locking the door. The next day, Marilia confronts Robert about Vera's behavior, saying it's because he gave her that face. She believes Vera's dangerous and Robert should kill her, but he dismisses this and orders Marilia to fire the other servants as they won't be needed anymore. After Robert leaves for the day and the servants depart, a man dressed as a tiger for the carnival arrives at the door. This is Zika, Marilia's estranged son, and he proves it by showing his birthmark to the camera. A wave of nostalgia hits Marilia, and she comes out to greet him, but forbids him from entering, as visitors aren't allowed. Zika ignores her and forces his way inside. Marilia decides to let him stay in the kitchen and feed him while they watch TV, but things quickly take a dark turn. A news report about a jewelry store robbery flashes on the TV, and Marilia sees Zika's face he only came to hide, not out of affection. The cops haven't found him yet, thanks to the costume that helped him blend into the carnival crowd. Zika wants Robert to operate on his face and change his looks, but Marilia refuses and tells him to go. He ignores her worries and starts searching the kitchen for alcohol. Instead, he gets distracted by the security cameras showing Vera. Her face looks familiar, and Zika doesn't understand how she can be here, prompting Marilia to get a gun she keeps hidden in the kitchen to threaten her own son into leaving before he learns too much. A gun isn't enough to scare Zika, and soon he's jumping on his mother to capture and tie her to a chair. Then, Zika goes upstairs to find Vera, but discovers the door locked. This doesn't stop him, and Zika immediately goes back to his mother to threaten her for the key. As soon as Zika opens the door, Vera kicks him to defend herself, struggling to escape his grip. Unfortunately, Zika is much stronger than her and overpowers her as he wonders aloud how she survived the fire. Desperate, Vera tries to bargain for her life, but Zika ignores her and takes her to bed to relive old times. Downstairs, Marilia begins to wonder if she'll have to watch her son violate Vera all night, but at that moment, Robert returns. As soon as he sees what's happening on the security cameras, he grabs his own gun and kills Zika, though Marilia wishes he had killed Vera too. Moments later, while Robert disposes of the body, Marilia tells Vera the secret story of Zika and Robert. It turns out they're half-brothers, a fact Marilia kept hidden. She had Zika with another servant who fled when he learned of her pregnancy, and she had Robert with her old boss, who took the baby and passed him off as his own wife's child due to her infertility. While legally Robert was their child, Marilia feels she did most of the work raising him. She also feels this is all her fault because her womb carries a gene for insanity, which both sons inherited. When Vera asks why Zika thought he knew her, Marilia explains she resembles Gal, Robert's late wife. Zika had grown up on the streets, but years ago, he showed up at the house asking for help. Marilia tried to hide him, but Gal found him and fell in love, eventually running away with Zika. Tragically, they were in a car accident. Zika escaped, but Gal was badly burned. Robert found her barely alive and brought her home, hiding all the mirrors so Gal wouldn't see her scarred face. That's when Robert's research on face transplants began, but his efforts weren't fast enough. One afternoon, Vera heard her daughter singing outside and went to the window, where she finally saw her own reflection. The shock of seeing a face that was barely human caused her to jump, her scream echoing through the house. Her body landed in the garden in front of her daughter, traumatizing her and setting in motion events that led to her years later repeating her mother's actions. At that moment, Robert returns from burying Zika's body and finally accepts Vera's offer, sleeping in his bed that night. The two of them kiss, but Vera doesn't want to go further because of the pain Zika inflicted. The new couple cuddles until sleep comes. That night, Robert dreams of the terrible events that happened 6 years ago. He attended a wedding party with his daughter Norma, now a teenager thanks to medicine that helped her recover from her mental breakdown after her mother's death. The party was going well when Robert realized Norma was missing and went to the garden to look for her. After seeing a guy ride away on a bike, Robert found Norma's shoes and coat, following the trail until he found his daughter unconscious, her clothes disheveled, indicating the bike rider had assaulted her. As soon as she woke up, she saw Robert and started screaming, thinking he was her attacker. Back to the present, Vera is dreaming of the same event. Vicente, a young man who helped his mother at her dress shop, crashed the party and took some of the illegal drugs other guests were using. Vicente then tried flirting with Norma, misinterpreting the effects of the drugs she was taking, and took her to the garden. Norma removed her coat and shoes simply because they bothered her, but Vicente mistook this as a sign of interest and dragged her under a tree to get intimate. At first, Norma didn't mind, but when the wedding band began playing the song she was singing when her mother died, her PTSD was triggered and she started screaming. Unwilling to stop, Vicente covered her mouth, but Norma bit him. This made Vicente hit her, accidentally knocking her unconscious. Panicked, he quickly fixed her clothing and fled on his bike, unaware that Robert saw his license plate. A few days later, while Vicente was out for a ride, Robert donned a disguise and rammed his van into Vicente's bike, causing a crash. Robert then shot Vicente with a tranquilizer dart and kidnapped him, imprisoning him in an old garage on his property. It wasn't long before Vicente started losing his mind in isolation. Robert never spoke to him, only appearing to hose him down or bring water and rice. Vicente's mom went to the police for help, but they found the bike at the bottom of a cliff and assumed Vicente had either died or fled town. Meanwhile, Robert kept visiting Norma at the mental hospital, but she was terrified of him and hid in the wardrobe whenever he came. Eventually, Norma met the same tragic end as her mother, a loss that pushed Robert from an ordinary doctor into a mad scientist. A few days after Norma's funeral, Robert shaved Vicente and put him to sleep before taking him to his private operating room. Fulgencio and 2 other surgeon friends arrived to help with the procedure, believing Robert's forged documents claiming the patient sought privacy. The operation went well, and when Vicente woke up, he discovered Robert had forced him to undergo a vaginoplasty. From then on, Vicente lived locked in a room in the house. He was forced to diligently care for his new anatomy, using toys to keep the passage open until it healed. Once healed, an obsessed Robert began subjecting Vicente to more procedures to transform his body into a woman's, including giving him a full chest and a higher-pitched voice. That's when Vicente began wearing the full-body suit, which Robert believed would protect his skin and help shape his new body. On his first day in the room, Vicente attacked Robert and tried to escape, but Robert was prepared. The front door was locked, and his gun intimidated Vicente into submission. Cornered, Vicente attempted suicide to prevent further harm. Getting hurt in a doctor's house was futile. Robert simply stitched up the wound. A few weeks later, Vicente underwent the final major procedure for a while. He was given Gal's face, and Robert renamed him Vera. At first, Vera rebelled by destroying the dresses in her room and ignoring the makeup and feminine books Robert sent her. She kept only an eyeliner, which she used to draw on the walls, tracking the days and expressing her anguish, as she fought to hold on to her true identity. Her only entertainment was the TV, where she learned about yoga and the creation of creepy dolls. Around this time, Robert brought in his childhood maid, Marilia, to help manage Vera with a more feminine touch. Now that Vera and Robert are together, she's allowed to move freely around the house and live a seemingly normal life. However, Marilia dislikes her presence and remains convinced Vera can't be trusted. Robert adores Vera, and when she promises never to leave him, he lets her go shopping in the city with Marilia as her chaperone. Moments after the women leave, Fulgencio arrives to visit Robert, insisting he shouldn't quit his job, or at least rent out his private clinic to his surgeon friends. Robert refuses, so Fulgencio pulls out the big guns. He shows his friend today's newspaper, which features an article about missing people, including Vicenti's picture. Fulgencio remembers Vicenti from the surgery and begins to suspect Robert lied to them. He knows Robert's experiments required human genes, not just animal ones. Robert pulls his gun from his desk drawer, threatening Fulgencio into silence. Their confrontation is interrupted by Vera, who tells Fulgencio she gave full consent for every operation, convincing him to leave. That evening, Vera and Robert attempt to get intimate again, but Vera is still sore from Zika's attack and needs lubricating cream. Conveniently, she had bought some while shopping earlier, but supposedly left it in Robert's office. While retrieving the cream, she also grabs Robert's gun and brings it back to the room, ready to exact her revenge. Admitting that she's been lying all along to gain her freedom, Vera shoots and kills Robert. Marilia hears the shot and rushes to the room with her own gun, but Vera waits in hiding under the bed and shoots her as soon as she enters. With her tormentors gone, Vera steals clothes and money before finally escaping the house. The next morning, she arrives at her mother's shop, shocking her mother by revealing details only Vicenti would know to prove her true identity.